was originated from a book that I just put out that was published by Wiley called Integrative Advisory Services. And the purpose of this book is really to get us to the next level of the discussion of what is advisory services and how do you actually attain those soft skills. You know, we just heard a lot about the technology and so forth, but we don't talk enough about the soft skills development that we need in order to become advisors. So that's what today's session is going to be all about. And there's a couple talks on YouTube that are kind of precursors to this talk. One really talking about the technology, that how you put together your technology, how you really come up with your purpose, create your industry verticals. That's the Connected Advisor talk. The other talk is Great Technology Attracts Great Talent. This one is all about the generational differences, how we put all of that together and really change the processes that we have in the firm in order to free up this time to become advisors. So today's talk is all about the soft skill side of this discussion. I'm going to talk about why this is so important to me personally first, before we begin. And this day in 1987, for those of you that remember it, was really a turning point in my family's life. My mom was a business owner, and she owned small businesses in a few states that were maid services. And she was an art teacher becoming a business owner. And when she started this business, it started out residential and then eventually grew into construction cleanup. And that was printing money for a while. So it was one of those things where she worked with an accountant. The accountant gave her her financials maybe 6 months after the year was over. But this was mostly just riding this business of where it took you, and she wasn't getting much advice from anywhere. Well, for most of you that deal with contractors know that they deal with construction loans. And starting in 1987, the construction industry hit a really bad turn. And all of these construction jobs, they stopped paying. And they stopped paying my mom all of the work that was owed to her. And when I think about this story as an accountant now and having been doing advisory services for many years, I think about the issue of no one was actually talking to her about how you plan for issues like construction loans and how you work with budgeting and forecasting numbers and cash flow to make sure that you can protect against any downfalls and that you're saving properly. Well, in this case, she didn't. And she had the choice of, do I pay my employees or do I pay my payroll taxes? She paid her employees. And after that, the IRS was after us for years and years and years. We had to sell our house. I had to sell my furniture. I watched people come into our house and buy every single thing that we had so that we could pay all of this off. And this is why this is so important to me, to help the profession really move into this advisory function. Because too often we've been about hitting deadlines and giving someone financial statements that they don't understand. But the real issues in the business is what my family encountered. Is someone actually alerting them of financial issues? How do they better run their business? It's the intangible, not just the tangible financials. And the next thing that hit me when I wrote this book was I was fortunate that my mom would take me to all of these different events. So she'd take me to chamber events and trade shows, and I was learning business from a very, very early age. And I would ask all of the people that she worked with, what should I do when I go into college? And every single one of them said, get a degree in accounting, because no matter if you do it or not, it will help you in business. And so I was writing the introduction to this book, and I wrote that, and then I stepped back a second, and I'm like, wait a second. Why were they telling me that? There's a root to this problem that they felt like they had to go to school for accounting in order to run their business. People don't feel like they have to become a lawyer, that they have to become a designer. But they felt like in order to get the right advice and to know how to run their business, you needed an accounting degree. And when you think about that, that's how much this service is needed. That these business owners have so many questions. They need that partner in their business to be able to run it, and they shouldn't feel like you have to be an accountant to do what your passion is in life that has nothing to do with accounting. It should be that you're partnering as well as you can with your advisor and your accountant to be able to get the help that you need. So, which really comes back to purpose. And really thinking about, why did you become an accountant in the first place? What was it that got you excited about accounting? Anyone want to answer? See a smile back there?
Money.
Money. What else? Any other things come to your head?
Seem logical. Versus English, where you just wrote papers.
Yeah. Like math. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe it was stability.
Stability. So all of these answers are very common. But what they miss is the small business, is the client side. Is we go into it for our own personal reasons, right? Because we're good at certain things, that we feel a job is safe or secure. But the actual delivery of our work is to help other businesses thrive. And so it's really important to think about, when you're moving into advisory services, why are you doing it? What is it that you want to accomplish? Because when you know that, the whole relationship starts changing with the client. And when we talk about all this technology and putting all this change into place, what this does is free up our time to be able to deliver these advisory services. And everybody talks about it, but gets afraid of having this time because it's different. And I'm going to have to change the way I'm working or doing my work. And this doesn't actually sound like fun, because I went into it because it's logical, stable, to make money. I didn't actually go into it to spend time talking to people. So when we're talking about making that transition, then we actually need to step back and think about how we go about doing that. And it needs just as much time on this side of the business as the technology, as the technical skills of being an accountant. And, I speak to a lot of small businesses, and small businesses all the time are saying, I need someone to help me, show me how to grow my business, how I can integrate my technology systems together, what's driving my businesses, how do I watch my cash flow. From the accountant side, we're saying the client wants more of my time, but I don't have it. Clients would not pay for advisory services. I get a lot of accountants telling me what clients won't do, but no one actually asks a client what they actually want. And so we have this difference between what we're thinking and what we are doing versus what the clients really want from us as an advisor. So we're going to talk about this journey of how do you become this cherished advisor to your clients. And I want to start with just talking about the term trusted advisor first. So that was another kind of aha moment when I was writing the book, is that I was thinking about the term trusted advisor. And did that really reflect what we do as advisors to clients? And so I looked up the definition, and trusted means regarded as honest and sincere. Now, I don't think that's something to strive for. I think that's something we should be. We should be honest and sincere, and that's part of the ethical side of being an accountant and so forth. When you look up the word cherished, it means treasured. It means that you're highly valued and honored. That's something to strive for. That's something that when we get there with our clients, we know that we have this secure relationship and we're delivering the value that we are intended to deliver. That it brings everyone together to try to drive for a different type of relationship with the client. And it's really important to remember that it's the experience that we create that is what people remember, not what we say, not what we do. This I talk a lot about this elevator talk. So when a client comes and meets with you, You show them all these numbers, you show them all these bars and graphs of information, and they shake their head yes. And then they walk into the elevator and they say to their partner, did you understand the thing he said? No. Did you? No. Because there's not a discussion about what those numbers mean, because we know what it means. And we're telling them what it means, but we're not actually explaining how they make an impact on it and how it could actually affect their business. And so it's really important that we make them comfortable in this relationship. And we have to remember that it takes work. That this is not something that just happens. It happens because we put effort into it, and it happens by design. So we're going to talk about 3 areas to begin with. Beyond the technology is the soft skills, how do we build value, and how do we design this client experience. So first, let's talk about soft skills. Now, just to level set, this is a skill, and it is a skill, to interact with other people. We don't all go into accounting to interact with other people. A lot of us went into accounting because we like numbers and we like to do math and like how everything works out. But in order to really change this, we have to work on how we interact with other people and get the information we need. And there's 6 components that I outline about soft skills that are important to keep in mind, and that are skills that need to be trained within your practice. When you think about putting a plan together for yourself or the people that you work with, what are the areas that they need to spend more time on and start learning? So let's talk about being responsive. So, a lot of times we're not responsive only because we're afraid of what question we're going to get asked. And this I learned very early on in my business. I started my business when I was 27 years old. I did not know much. I thought I knew more than I knew. And I went out to my first client, and he had all these questions for me, and I said, I'll get back to you on that. And what I learned very early on is as long as I got back to him fast enough, he was happy. I did not have to have the answer right away. And so it's eliminating some of that stress that we have to be this all-knowing person. We have to be someone resourceful and responsive to our clients. Collaboration. So making sure that we're asking the right questions and collaborating with our clients and our teams so that we achieve the client's goals, not just our goals, but we understand what the client's goals are so that we can work into that. Influence. Now, this is a skill all on its own, but this means that you may know the outcome that you want. You may know what you want someone else to do, but you make them think it's their idea at the end of the day. And that way, you've come to it together and you've influenced the decision that they understand why they're making that decision. They don't just feel like you told them to do that and they're not really clear why they're doing it. It's a whole different way of working with a client. Problem solving. Again, not an immediate answer, but that you have the right resources around you, whether that's with your networks, with the association, with other accountants that you meet and network with, or right within your practice, or you know where to go to research to be able to assess those problems. Leadership, I think a lot of times we bring because we're accountants and CPAs, but it's a place that people are safe when they come to us, right? Like we give them that feeling of security and safe that we know and we will take care of their business. Project management, I think, is a really big weakness actually in the accounting profession. And we're going to talk about what that means throughout. But a lot of times work is just, okay, we signed the client, here, you're assigned to it, go at it. That's not project management. And so we're going to talk about how important this is because we need to come up with a total plan to make sure we're achieving goals of the client, but also thinking long-term as well when they're ready for the next phase. And being proactive in the relationship, that takes project management and oversight into that relationship. And we start that by taking time with our teams. So over and over again, when I talk to accounting firms about moving into advisory services, many of the leaders of the practice go, oh, my staff could never do that. But that's because this is not happening. We're not taking time away from the work, allowing our staff to shadow us and to come and see what it's like to be on a client engagement, what questions we get asked, and why we answered that way, so that they can start internalizing how do they start learning these skills. The only way, there is no checklist for advisory skills. Let's just start there. So in tax or audit, there's checklists. In advisory skills, you do not know what you're going to be asked to do. And people have to start learning the skill of how do you respond and how do you get that answer without feeling like you don't know, that you still were influential and provided leadership. The other thing is how you draw people into your practice and show expertise and leadership. So that could be that you're running your own trainings, networking events. If there's industries that you specialize in, that you're bringing in experts into your own practice to have trainings and talks to your clients, that you start showing expertise because of the people that you know. And also mentorship. So a lot of practices have the term mentorship written in all their marketing material, or they force mentorship. But mentorship actually shouldn't be forced. Mentorship should be that wherever I am in my career, I'm looking for my own opportunities that somebody else is showing expertise in. So that could be in sales, may not be something technical, and somebody else in the practice is really good at selling. That should be my mentor that year, helping me learn how to sell. It doesn't mean it always has to be the same person all the time, and there should be some self-selection in the process of where you feel comfortable and who you feel comfortable working with. Most importantly, when you're setting your goals and how you're going to be evaluated and how your teams are going to be evaluated, there has to be time allocated for this type of training. People don't just know how to do it. You need time to shadow, you need time to practice in a room by yourselves, ask the questions that you don't want to ask in front of a client, and be able to test yourself and fall down when you need to, and show your weaknesses. That is really important in growing these skills so that you feel comfortable when you go with your clients. I do a number of case studies in this book of other advisors that have this, not only in the United States, but all over the world. Because as I've found with training accountants all over the world, we are all the same. This is a human condition. So we think we're different, but when we go into accounting, there's a very specific skill set personality that goes into accounting no matter what country you live in. And, Shelley was talking about in her case study just about a lot of times a client will say they have a problem, and many accountants will just take that at face value. But they know something's not right, they don't know exactly what's not right, and that's where those skills of having the questioning and really trying to uncover what is going on in order to create that problem, not just taking that at face value in order to help your client get better. Now, in my business, I had bookkeepers, I had controllers, CFOs, and one was really good technically, and one just had an awesome personality. Not good technically. Everything she did, we wrote off because we would have to redo the work, no matter how many times we talked to her, it just wasn't, sinking in. But the clients loved her. They hated the other one. And every time I would talk to the client, I would say, yeah, but she's really good, she's got, she's, really doing a great job on your books. And they're like, I don't care, she makes me uncomfortable. And I think that's really important when we think about skill sets of staffing and the people we bring into these client relationships. Personality matters. And we have to be testing for that when we interview, because in this advisory relationship, we are talking to those clients more. We're part of their business. It's not just seeing them once a year and giving them a tax return. So we need to be thinking about that as we move forward. Now let's talk about building value. So when we go back to the term cherished, it's treasured. And to become treasured, you have to be someone that's sought after. And these are some areas that you can make sure that you're incorporating into your practice. One of them being thought leadership. Making sure that, if you've got clients that are horizontal and really starting to think about what industries you really want to focus on and become an expert, it's important to start putting yourself out there as a thought leader. So not just going to chamber events where there's, a million people of the same kind, is finding those events where if you're into construction that you are joining the real estate groups and the construction groups and the government contractor groups so that you can start setting yourself apart as an expert in those areas and also writing about it and thinking about it as well. Creating the strategic partnerships and networking really go together, and I think it's really important that when we talk about that we are responsive, it's responsive because of the network that we build. So my biggest goal when I have my practice with my clients was that they came to me first, that I was their central person that they would come to of like, do you know anybody that does this? Because they started feeling, they trusted me that the people that I was going to refer to them were top-notch, that knew what they were doing and so forth. It is up to us as the accountant and the advisor to really create a strong network of people that we can refer in and also host those events. Now, designing your website takes a lot of thought. If you do nothing else first, this is really, really important because this should be a central place that people are coming to get information on your expertise, your thought leadership, to interact with you. That this isn't a cookie cutter website that every other accountant has, and that the terminology that you put on this website actually speaks to the clients that you're trying to get. That you're speaking in their language, that you also have maybe testimonials from clients just like them, speaking to them about how you've helped their business. It has to be about them and not you. And too many times our websites are about us. And it should be worked on all of the time. It's always updated. And so someone needs to be focusing on that website so that there's always resources and information that clients come to and find value more than having to pick up the phone and call you. The other thing is your social media. So on your website, you can incorporate all of your social media and content right into your website. So although you have all these different outlets, someone needs to be monitoring them. If on your website you're centrally feeding them in as well, it's another place that they can go for the most up-to-date information that you're putting out there as well. Now, writing. This is how we create thought leadership, is by putting out articles and blogs and getting published. It takes time. We can think like, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to write this article and get it done. But then it's an hour, it's 2 hours, you keep scrapping it and redoing it, and you realize it's just a time suck. If this is not something that comes natural to you, hire a copywriter. It will be your best friend in getting this done, and you really should be putting out new content at least every week, at least once a week. And what a copywriter will do is you give them the topics that you want to talk about. They'll interview you, so even if you're on the way to a client or between client appointments, you can talk to them, have them interview, put the article together, they send the article to you, you just edit, and then you're done. So don't feel like you have to do everything. Find the right resources and skill sets so that you can make sure that you are still spending the time with your clients. Kenji has a practice in Atlanta, and they've done an interesting thing with the content on their website. Although they do a lot of their writing, they get their staff writing and putting content up there. They've also gotten their clients to submit articles as well that are important on industry issues for the types of clients that they work with. And I think we miss that a lot, right? And clients want to hear from others and be able to network together as well. And when you can provide that too, through your website, that elevates your expertise as well. Now, when we talk about virtual, I was at an event a couple weeks ago and someone said, well, I'm gonna miss the hug if I'm not physically with the client. But in order to be efficient, we have to start moving into a virtual realm. And this is an example of how you actually can be showing information on the screen, but making sure you have the webcam on. That you're still seeing eyeballs and talking to each other. You still have that time, because when you're on a phone call, it becomes very agenda focused, versus when you're looking at someone, you still ask them about their dog, about their children, and those are important things in this advisory relationship. It is what bonds you into making sure that all of that works. Now, this is a really, really important piece into the accounting firm experience in total, is designing that experience that the client is going to have when they come into your practice. Too many times we're not focused on the customer experience. We just assume once we make that sale that everything will just be fine with that client. But we need to think about that it's every single interaction that client has with us is our brand as a practice, is our brand as far as what we provide to them and how they feel about us. Whenever I ask accounting firms, how do you know if your clients are happy? They're like, well, they come back. That's not an answer, right? Like, that doesn't mean that they're actually enjoying the experience of working with their accountant or their advisor. So thinking about all the different touch points that happen in the practice and making sure that you put thought and planning or someone assigned to thinking about what is that experience going to be like for their client as they go through it. So we go through this area of awareness of just your practice, and this is also why your website is so important, because clients do a lot of research on you before they ever talk to you. And so this awareness piece and that whole thought leadership is really important. Then you go through this discovery phase, and the discovery phase is both of you talking, which you're going to talk about a little bit in a second. And then once you've actually signed them on, it's developing the relationship. It's not just assuming that they're just going to be happy once that engagement letter is signed. What your goal is that they become an advocate for you. That they're having such a great experience working with your practice that they're telling anyone that can hear, like, I have the best accountant, you need to have my accountant, because this is a totally different experience. And then thinking about how you service clients long term. Is that there's a support system in place to be responsive, to make sure that they can get the information that they need. Now, this is an Oracle research report, but in corporations everywhere, this is globally, that customer experience matters in creating customer loyalty and making sure that they are willing to pay for you. So, I talk about the story of one of my clients that when I was in the construction industry again in South Florida in 2006 when everything went down there. And I focused on that with my advisory services. And I had a client call me that said, I only have $200 this month. Can you meet with me? That's when you know you've created a customer experience and value for a client. That $200 was like $1 million for her at that moment. But in order to survive, they felt they needed to have that time to be able to talk. And so this is really important when you think about how you deliver this. Now, part of building this experience is thinking through, at first, your mission statement. How many of you have mission statements? How many of you have, was this like, our firm, our employees matter, or did everybody come together and actually talk about what makes us different? How are we affecting our clients? What is the outcome that we want to have? That's the mission statement. So if it's not a group thing where either you talk to your spouse, your partners, your staff. What is it that you are trying, that you want a client to feel and say about you? That's your mission. What do you want your employees to say about you? And that builds into your brand, and every other thing in your practice starts lining up to it because everybody knows why they're doing what they're doing. Because it matters. So my customer support, what segments I choose to focus on, all drive out of my mission statement and my brand. What does the customer life cycle look like? How do you continue on with a current customer and keep growing that relationship rather than having to keep getting new clients? And then how do you continually assess and deploy new things into your practice? And this is really important because once we put this into place once, that could have been 15 years ago when you did your mission statement, but today it might not still be applicable, or there's things that need to adjust. It should be agile enough that you're constantly going back each year and looking at it. Is this still where we want to be? Is there something we need to change? And then how does that affect every other segment that we're doing in our business? So let's talk about the 3 phases of this. This first, securing the client relationship. So when we're talking to a new client, this is one of the most important times in the relationship for us to document that conversation. So too many times, it's the partner or business development person that's having this conversation. It's not documented, nor is there a standard checklist of what questions you ask during this process. Because if anybody else were going to be in the sales process asking those questions, it should be consistent, the kind of information that you need to gather. And during this process, it should be completely open-ended questions. You should not hardly be talking at all. It's not about selling yourself. There's no entrepreneur out there that doesn't love to talk about their business and keep talking about it. So the more you can uncover and get them talking, the better it is going to be for you, because number one, you've got to assess fit for your own practice and the team that you work with. But also, is this going to be a good client? Can you really help them with what you have to offer? And how would you help them? Now, you may still come back at the end of the sales process telling them the same thing you would have said in day one. But when you can reframe your communication to address their pain points, that's a totally different proposal. And so this is very open-ended question that this is, again, a skill that should be trained on in your practice. Of everything is, well, tell me more about that. Well, why do you think that that happened? Give me a little bit more information about that. You just keep going and going and going until you've really explored all the information that you can to get out of that. It's really important as you move through that relationship, not only to effectively communicate how you're gonna benefit that client, but also to document in your own practices, how are you gonna phase this client? So a lot of times in these conversations, there's so much that gets lost on the cutting room floor from these conversations. Because when we get a client started, we might only start with one of the things we talked about in this initial conversation, because that's all there's time to do. But if we document it and keep it in a system, we know in 12 months from now, I need to go back to them on the second phase now and say, okay, now we've gotten this piece done. Let's now talk about the next thing, when they're ready. There's so much business you can keep drawing from the same client if you keep this documented and you're monitoring this. This goes into the project management piece as well. So really important to think about how you keep track of that. James is in Sydney, Australia, and he talks about this process is also educating that client, that prospective client, on how they work, right? Like, so it's got to be a match both ways. Because if a client comes in and it's inefficient for your practice, then it throws off your whole profitability model, especially if you're in value billing. And a lot of times I would tell my clients right up front, like, this is how I bill, I bill you at the first of every month, and that's conversation's done. It's just taken away because you don't want to have billing conversations once you're in the advisory relationship. You want to have that just happening in the background so you're not talking about money and you're not feeling like you're being taken advantage of. But right up front, people know how this relationship's going to be set up. Now, with creating the relationship, it's important to create a cadence of meetings, and it's not just one person. So from that initial conversation, everything gets documented, but you might put other people on different pieces of the engagement, right? Like they're doing different pieces of the work. But if you were the original person to speak to them and you're the customer relationship manager, you should not ever take your finger off that relationship. You should be setting some sort of monthly, quarterly, twice a year meeting with that client so that you can keep track of, are things happening the way that we initially set out for them to happen? But I can tell you for myself, when I set these meetings with my clients, I ended up selling more business every time I had those meetings because they were saving things that they didn't have time to call me about, or making a list because they knew I would be talking to them. And so all these opportunities start coming once you start talking to them. So it's a really important meeting to set in, and then they know as well that you care, that you're still a part of that relationship, that you haven't let go of it, and you're monitoring any issues that they're having with other team members that might be a part of this as well. So Will, who is in the UK, does the same thing, is that every touch point is an opportunity to build another relationship, another way to grow that relationship. And his case study is in the book as well. I asked this question of how do you become an expert? So we sometimes, going back to the beginning, don't answer a phone call because we might not know what they're going to ask. And I learned this, that you become an expert by being asked a question, researching it. Now you know it for the next time. You are now the expert. And I used to make jokes with my staff of like, okay, you did it once, now teach everybody else what you did. You're the expert now on construction because you took that first client, you figured it out. We now have a process that we can start iterating on. Everyone starts becoming experts this way. So it's not being afraid of that question and being excited about the learning. Now, making sure that you create a lasting relationship with your clients that you can grow is making sure your clients are happy. And again, just because a client re-signs an engagement letter with you or stayed with you years or years doesn't mean that they're happy. It just means that they're too lazy to find another accountant, or they're embarrassed to expose their information to somebody else. So it is important to ask this question. And there's a net promoter, which I strongly believe in, and it's really important for the accounting industry because it means everything. And the question is, would you recommend me to a friend, family member, or colleague? That is our business. If they answer that question low, they are not happy. Because if they're happy, they would recommend you. So it's a question that you have them rank it from 0 to 10. If you anywhere between 0 and 6, they're a detractor, means that they're not happy. A 7 or 8 is passive, which means they're just there. A 9 or 10 means that they are someone that is going to proactively talk about you. And you score it. You actually throw out the 7 or 8s because they really aren't going one way or the other. But you take away the detractors from the people that are the promoters, and that becomes your score. And it really becomes important because the next question is, what could I do to rate as a 9 or a 10 next year? And so this is a really important question because they might say, oh, I need, this type of service. They don't even know you offer that service, and you can come back and go, we actually can do that for you. Or something that's going on in the relationship that you don't realize. The other thing that's really important when we talk about those cadence of meetings is that when you end a meeting, you say, is there anything we're not doing that we should be doing? That you continue those open-ended questions so that they know that you are listening and that you care if they're happy. And this whole customer relations management continuum are all things that need to be focused on in your practice. So going back to every touch point is that you know that you've put together a strategy for your clients or segments, that you have a customer service branding mission of how you respond to clients, what that response time is going to be, and where does it go. That in your marketing, it reflects how you work with your clients. You're out there on social media. You are selling, and everybody's a part of the sales process so that they get that information. Technical support's a really important piece of this. As more and more technology comes into play, you need to think about who is going to provide technical support. I can't continue to be an advisor and do that type of work if I'm having a technology issue. Who's going to call the technology companies, especially when you start adding on different ecosystem partners and you're working with multiple applications? So if you're a small practice and you don't have other people working for you, you can outsource this to people that specialize in the whole integrations and customization of reporting and all that type of stuff that might not be in your own practice. But really important to think through so that whole customer service, that whole relationship feels good and people know where they're going. It's not just to one person every time. 80% of your future revenue will come from 20% of your current customers. Now, when you think about your client base, there are all these customers that you keep that are just time suck, right? That you're not necessarily making money on them and you keep them year after year after year. What this process does is start helping you to say, this is where I want to be. These are the types of clients I want to serve. This is the way I want to serve them. I need to start looking at how do I fire some clients so that I make room for the clients that I want, else I don't have the capacity to do it. So thinking about, a lot of times I did this in the way of like, okay, my fee is going to be X. And if this isn't good for you, I have a great accountant that would be the right fit. So not just dropping somebody, finishing out that relationship of where you can put them if they decide not to move to your new process. And again, this happens over time, but once you get more bedded into what you're doing, this is a really important thing. Now, going back to what I talked about in the beginning about your team, is not taking enough time to make sure that everybody's developing these skills and it's not just the partners and it's not just the leaders at the top. This is a picture of a mom trying to train a 16-year-old to drive. And a lot of times I feel like that is how partners feel about their staff. Oh, they can never do this. I don't know. And then the second piece is I am afraid to delegate it. Right? Like there's this whole trust issue that is happening. It is really important that we take the time, put on the training wheels, and allow that work to come together so that you do delegate and create that trust. You allow your team to go out to networking events. Find the places that they could go to actually drive business in the ways that they think you can drive business. I have a yoga studio, and I have my 16-year-old working for me. And we did a yoga retreat last weekend, and we're doing all these types of things of how do you incorporate yoga into your life. And we were doing exercise and painting and all these things, and I put my 16-year-old in charge of what we called find and snap. So going out and doing a scavenger hunt and then teaching a Snapchat. And what we actually can learn from the younger generations about social media or about networking, because we're not attracting the next generation in the way we think you go do it, because we're not aware of the ways you do it. So you've got to collaborate with each other and allow that to happen. I also deployed something called Coffee Talk. So I had staff all over the country, So I would give them a Starbucks card once a month, pair different people up, and say for 30 minutes, I want you to step away from your work, go get a cup of coffee, meet with each other, and just think about the business. What are you seeing are issues in the business? What do you think we should be doing that we're not doing? So we could surface some ideas of people that are with the clients every day or experiencing the issues in the practice. This was a great way to come up with new ideas that we could then start implementing, and the staff feeling like they were a part of that decision making as well and how we deliver services to clients. And also incorporate fun. So in order for customers to feel happy, your employees need to feel happy, and finding ways to incorporate fun activities, ways to alleviate the stress of our jobs so that we're not pounding on ourselves all of the time. And this is really important. Is we lose this, it's just saying thank you. Thank you for your business, thank you for the work that you did, thank you. It is sometimes more meaningful than any kind of raise you can give somebody, that they feel appreciated, that they feel like you cared about the work that they're doing as well. So just putting that in. Now, just quickly, when we're talking about you've got compliance clients that you want to move to advisory, we're actually in the perfect time of year to do that. And so coming up with a plan of how you might transition some of your clients into advisory services for the next year. You need to think about where your risks might be, how you would start evaluating their data in a different way, getting feedback from them of what they like or don't like about how you deliver these services. But what you can do is deliver their tax return in a different way this year. Is rather than giving them a paper tax return, upload it into your cloud technology software and show it to them through dashboards. And then talk to them about some ratios you're seeing and differences, and then say, if you want to continue for us to have this discussion on a monthly basis, we can turn this into an advisory relationship this year so that we can talk about this ongoing. It is a perfect opportunity to be able to do that right now. And then just making sure that all of this comes back to your purpose. Taking that time to come back to what you want to serve your clients, why you're serving your clients, what you want them to get out from that relationship, so that you make sure that all of these things that you start building into your practice for advisory skills align back to that purpose. And being cherished. That client cherishes the relationship and you're seeing revenue growth just because they can't imagine not having you as part of the business. So just some takeaways is make sure you learn how to interpret data. That it's not about the calculation of the data, it's how you interpret it. How do you think outside of compliance and actually change the way that you interact with your clients? Develop your soft skills amongst you and your team members. Create client support tools so that client experience is consistent with whoever they talk to in your practice, and trust and delegate to your staff. I end with Michael. So he is a partner at Eisner Amper in New York, and I was sitting across from him for 2.5 years. They've been working to change into advisory services, and he sat across from me and said, in my 43rd year, I'm having more fun than I've ever had in my career. And so he's actually talked to them about he has to retire, and he doesn't want to right now, and about how he comes back as a consultant and keeps growing this practice. That's what makes this meaningful and fun, when you can actually see the impact of the work you're doing with your clients. So this is the book, and it has checklists and guides and help in there as well. And